The text message lit up my phone screen like a digital slap across the face. 11:03 on a Saturday night, and my sister Samantha was informing me, not asking, that she was dumping her 4 children at my downtown Chicago apartment for 2 weeks. No discussion, no request for permission, just pure entitlement wrapped in exclamation points about her husband surprising her with Bora Bora. I stared at those words, feeling my blood pressure spike as years of her manipulative behavior crystallized into this single moment of audacity. She actually expected me to drop everything because her apartment was further from the airport than mine. I typed back that I wasn't home, hoping to buy time. Her response made my jaw clench. Mom had my spare key and was letting them in. I smiled, then a cold satisfaction spreading through my chest as I dialed building security. Time for Samantha to learn that her baby brother Howard had grown a backbone. Jake answered on the second ring, his gravelly voice cutting through the late-night quiet of the security desk 15 floors below my window. I explained the situation quickly, watching him nod through the building's security camera feed on my phone app. Within 20 minutes, a locksmith was rekeying my door while I paced my living room, memories flooding back like a dam had burst. 32 years old, and I could still picture Samantha at age 7 crying until our parents forced me to give her my Halloween candy. She perfected that technique over the decades, escalating from stolen treats to borrowed belongings that never returned. My baseball cards disappeared into her room when she decided collecting was suddenly interesting. My first car became hers for prom, then graduation, then mysteriously whenever she needed transportation for months at a time. The pattern intensified after I graduated from Northwestern with my marketing degree. While I worked 80-hour weeks climbing from junior associate to senior director at Brennan & Associates, Samantha floated between part-time jobs and elaborate schemes. My credit card became her emergency fund for groceries that somehow cost $400 monthly. My garage housed her furniture during her frequent apartment changes. My Netflix password, my Amazon Prime, my Costco membership, everything became community property in Samantha's mind. But tonight felt different. Tonight felt calculated. My phone buzzed with a call from Mom. Patricia's voice carried that familiar guilty tremor she developed whenever defending Samantha's behavior. "Howard, honey, I know this is sudden, but Samantha has been so excited about this trip. She told us weeks ago that you offered to watch the children while she and Brad went to Bora Bora. She said you were thrilled to spend quality time with your nieces and nephew." My hand tightened around the phone. "Mom, I never agreed to anything. This is the first I'm hearing about any trip." Silence stretched between us. Then Patricia's voice cracked slightly. "But she showed me the text messages between you two. She said you volunteered when Brad surprised her with the vacation package." Ice formed in my stomach. Samantha had fabricated an entire conversation complete with fake screenshots to manipulate our parents into supporting her scheme. She knew I couldn't refuse. With 4 children standing in my hallway at midnight, their confused faces trusting that Uncle Howard would take care of them. "Mom, I need you to listen carefully. I never agreed to babysit. I never offered. Samantha is lying." The sharp intake of breath told me Patricia was beginning to understand. But then her voice shifted into familiar defensive territory. "Howard family means sacrifices sometimes. You have that beautiful apartment, a good job, no children of your own. Would it kill you to help your sister for 2 weeks? She works so hard at the insurance office, and Brad has been under tremendous pressure at the construction company." There it was. The guilt technique perfected over 3 decades. Howard, the successful bachelor who owed the family for his good fortune. Howard, the selfish brother who refused to share his blessings. Howard, the disappointment who put career before family obligations. "Where are Samantha's children staying tonight, Mom?" "Well, with you, of course. Samantha packed their suitcases and everything. She said their flight leaves at 6 in the morning, so she needed to drop them off late to avoid airport traffic." I closed my eyes, picturing my sister's smug satisfaction as she planned this ambush. She knew I had client presentations Monday morning. She knew I valued my privacy and quiet weekends. She knew I would cave under pressure rather than traumatize 4 innocent children with a family crisis at midnight. But Samantha had miscalculated one crucial factor. I was no longer the pushover brother who absorbed abuse to keep peace in the family. Jake's voice crackled through my building's intercom system. "Mr. Thompson Locksmith finished up here. Your new keys are ready at the front desk. Also got some visitors down here asking about apartment 1512. Lady with 4 kids and a lot of luggage. Should I send them up I smiled, feeling a calm settle over me that I hadn't experienced in years. "No, Jake. Those visitors don't have permission to be in the building. Please follow standard protocol for unauthorized guests." Through my window, I watched a silver minivan pull up to the curb below, brake lights glowing red in the darkness, like angry eyes. The U-Haul truck rumbling behind Samantha's minivan made my stomach drop 6 floors. Through my apartment window, the yellow rental vehicle looked massive under the streetlights, its cargo bay bulging with shapes that definitely weren't vacation suitcases. Furniture corners pressed against the metal walls. Cardboard boxes stacked floor to ceiling created a geometric puzzle of someone's entire life packed for transport. My phone buzzed with text from Samantha, growing increasingly frantic. "Where are you? The kids are tired. Why isn't Jake letting us up? He knows me. Call the front desk now. This is ridiculous." I ignored the messages, transfixed by the scene unfolding in the building's circular driveway. Samantha emerged from the minivan like a general preparing for battle. Her blonde hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweater that had seen better days. She yanked open the sliding door and 4 small figures tumbled out into the cold November air. Emma, the oldest at 14, immediately wrapped protective arms around her 3 younger siblings. 10-year-old Noah rubbed his eyes, clearly awakened from deep sleep for this midnight adventure. The twins, Lucy and Sophie, both 8, clutched identical stuffed animals while scanning the unfamiliar building with wide, nervous expressions. Through the building's security camera feed on my phone app, I watched Jake emerge from behind his marble desk in the lobby. His weathered face showed professional concern as Samantha approached the revolving glass doors, children trailing behind like confused ducklings. The conversation played out in silent pantomime 15 stories below me. Samantha gestured emphatically toward the elevators, clearly expecting immediate access to my floor. Jake shook his head, pointing to his computer screen, where new security protocols now flagged apartment 1512 as restricted access. Samantha's body language shifted from confident expectation to confused irritation. Then her mouth opened wide enough that I could imagine the volume escalating even through the building's soundproof lobby. Jake remained calm, his hands raised in a placating gesture that suggested he understood her frustration, but couldn't override building policy. Samantha pulled out her phone, jabbing at the screen with violent finger movements. My own phone erupted with her call. "Howard, what the hell did you do? Jake says he can't let us up because of some security change. I have 4 exhausted children and a U-Haul full of their belongings, and your doorman is treating us like criminals." "Belongings?" I kept my voice steady despite my racing heart. "I thought you were dropping off suitcases for a 2-week vacation." Static crackled through the connection. Then Samantha's voice returned with forced sweetness that made my skin crawl. "Well, the kids need their things, Howard. Their clothes, toys, school supplies. You know how children are about their comfort items when staying somewhere new?" Through the window, I watched her pace the lobby while Jake observed her growing agitation. Emma had gathered her siblings on a leather couch near the fireplace, their small faces reflecting fear and confusion. Noah's shoulders shook with quiet sobs that pierced my chest despite my anger at their mother. "Samantha, I can see the U-Haul from my window. That's not 2 weeks' worth of children's belongings. That's furniture and moving boxes." Silence stretched between us. When she spoke again, the sweet pretense evaporated completely. "Fine. Brad and I are having some financial difficulties. Okay, the kids need a stable place to stay while we sort things out. Your apartment is bigger than ours. You make more money and you're single without responsibilities. It's temporary until we get back from Bora Bora and figure out our next move. The truth crashed over me like ice water. There was no surprise vacation. This was Samantha attempting to move her family into my home permanently, using her children as emotional leverage to force my compliance. She had packed their entire lives into that truck, knowing I couldn't turn away 4 innocent faces at midnight. But she had underestimated both my resolve and building security protocols. Jake's voice echoed through the lobby intercom system, his words carrying up to my apartment through the ventilation. "Ma'am, I understand your frustration, but without proper authorization from the resident, I cannot provide building access to unauthorized guests. You're welcome to wait in the lobby while we contact Mr. Thompson, but the moving truck cannot remain in the driveway. City regulations require commercial vehicles to relocate after 15 minutes in residential loading zones." Samantha's response shattered the late-night calm. Her voice echoed off marble walls and floor-to-ceiling windows, creating a cacophony of rage that had other residents peering curiously from their apartments. "This is insane. That's my brother up there. Those are his nieces and nephew. Call the police if you want, but I'm not moving my truck until Howard comes down here and explains why he's abandoned his family." The twins began crying in earnest now, their quiet sobs mixing with Emma's whispered reassurances. Noah had buried his face in his sister's shoulder, his small body trembling with exhaustion and fear. Other building residents emerged from elevators drawn by the commotion, their faces reflecting annoyance at the midnight disruption. My phone rang again, but this time the caller ID showed Mom. "Howard, what have you done?" Samantha called, crying that you changed your locks and won't let the children into your apartment. She's stranded downtown with 4 babies and nowhere to go. I took a deep breath, watching my sister pace the lobby like a caged animal, while her children huddled together on furniture that cost more than most families' monthly rent. Mom Samantha lied to all of us. There's no Bora Bora vacation. She's trying to move her entire family into my apartment because she's having financial problems she didn't tell anyone about. I won't enable this manipulation anymore. Patricia's gasp carried clearly through the phone. "But the children, Howard. You can't punish innocent babies for their mother's mistakes." She was right, and Samantha knew it. Those 4 scared faces in my lobby represented the perfect emotional trap. Turn them away and become the heartless uncle who abandoned family in crisis. Accept them and become the enabler who rewarded manipulation and lies. I closed my eyes, knowing my next decision would change everything between us forever. The elevator ding at 2:17 in the morning announced an arrival I wasn't expecting. Through my security app, I watched my father Daniel emerge into the lobby. His silver hair disheveled and his usually pristine button-down shirt wrinkled from what must have been a frantic 3-hour drive from their suburban Naperville home. At 64, Dad had maintained the robust build of someone who spent 40 years in construction management. But tonight, he moved like a man carrying invisible weight. His shoulders sagged as he surveyed the scene. Samantha pacing near the windows, 4 children sleeping fitfully on lobby furniture, and Jake maintaining diplomatic distance while monitoring the situation. My phone buzzed with Dad's call. "Howard, I'm downstairs. We need to talk, all of us, right now." His voice carried an edge I hadn't heard since childhood, when neighborhood bullies picked on Samantha and unleashed Dad's protective fury. But tonight something else lurked beneath the familiar authority. Exhaustion, defeat, fear. "Dad, I know this looks bad, but Samantha lied to everyone about having permission to bring the kids here. She's trying to move her family into my apartment because of some financial problem she hasn't told anyone about." "Oh, I know about the financial problem, son. That's why I drove down here at 2 in the morning instead of waiting for a reasonable hour." The ice in his voice made my stomach clench. Through the security feed, I watched him approach Samantha with measured steps, his expression unreadable. Their conversation played out in urgent whispers, punctuated by Samantha's increasingly animated gestures. "Dad, what do you mean you know about the problems?" Daniel's sigh carried decades of weariness. "Howard, your mother and I remortgaged our house 6 months ago. Samantha convinced us you had agreed to co-sign business loans for her insurance office expansion. She said you were excited to help family build wealth together, that you saw it as an investment opportunity. My apartment suddenly felt airless. Dad, I never co-signed anything. I never agreed to any loans. I don't even know what business expansion she's talking about. The one that required $37,000 in startup capital. The one that was supposed to generate enough revenue to pay for the kids' college funds and help us retire comfortably. The one that apparently doesn't exist based on what Brad just told me when I called him in Bora Bora. My legs gave out, sending me onto my couch as the magnitude of Samantha's deception crystallized. She hadn't just manipulated me tonight. She had been systematically defrauding our parents for months, using my name and reputation to extract their retirement savings for some fictional business venture. Dad, you need to call the police. If she used my identity without permission for loan applications, that's fraud. That's identity theft. I know what it is, Howard. His voice cracked with exhaustion. But she's my daughter. She's the mother of my grandchildren. And your mother has been in denial about Samantha's problems for so long that facing the truth now might destroy her. Through the window, I watched Dad place a gentle hand on Emma's shoulder as she tried to comfort her sleeping siblings. The 14-year-old looked up with eyes that held too much adult understanding for her age. She knew something was terribly wrong with her family, even if she didn't understand the financial complexities. How much money, Dad? Silence stretched between us. When he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. Everything, Howard. The house, our savings, my pension fund. She convinced us to liquidate everything because you had guaranteed the returns would pay for the grandkids' educations and our retirement. She showed us bank statements, profit projections, business plans. It all looked legitimate. My hands shook as the full scope of Samantha's crimes became clear. She hadn't just stolen my identity for loans. She had created elaborate forgeries to convince our parents that I was orchestrating their financial ruin as a family investment opportunity. Dad, I'm calling my attorney right now. Marcus Wilson specializes in financial fraud cases. We need to document everything before Samantha destroys more evidence. Your mother doesn't know the full extent yet. She thinks we're helping with temporary cash flow problems while Samantha's business gets established. If she finds out we lost the house, Daniel's voice trailed off, but I could fill in the devastating blanks. Mom's entire identity revolved around their suburban home, where she raised her children and planned to host grandchildren for decades. Learning that Samantha's lies had cost them everything might break something inside Patricia that couldn't be repaired. Jake's voice crackled through my intercom. Mr. Thompson, sorry to interrupt, but I've got Chicago PD requesting access to speak with your family about a noise disturbance. Several residents have complained about the late-night commotion. Should I send the officers up? Through my security app, I saw two uniformed police officers entering the lobby. Their expressions professional, but clearly annoyed at being called out for a domestic dispute in an upscale building. Samantha's face went white as she recognized the potential legal complications of her situation. My phone exploded with frantic texts. Howard, call off the cops. You're traumatizing your nieces and nephew. This is child abuse. You're forcing babies to sleep in a lobby. Mom and Dad will never forgive you for this. But as I watched the scene unfold below, a different truth became apparent. The police officers weren't focused on arresting anyone. They were concerned about 4 children being dragged into an adult conflict at 2:30 in the morning. One officer knelt beside the twins, speaking softly while checking their welfare. The other took notes as Jake explained the building access dispute. Emma stood up straighter, her adolescent instincts recognizing that she needed to protect her siblings by telling the truth to these authority figures. I watched her mouth moving as she explained their situation to the officers, her gestures indicating confusion about why they were in a strange building instead of home in their beds. Dad's voice cut through my racing thoughts. Howard, I need you to come downstairs. We're going to sort this out as a family tonight with everyone present. No more lies, no more manipulation, no more enabling. These children deserve better than being pawns in their mother's schemes. I grabbed my new keys from the kitchen counter, knowing that whatever happened in the next hour would determine whether my family could be salvaged or was already too broken to repair. The elevator ride to the lobby felt endless, each floor bringing me closer to a confrontation that had been building for 32 years. The lobby had transformed into a battlefield of family dysfunction under the harsh, fluorescent emergency lighting that Jake activated when police arrived. Samantha stood cornered near the marble reception desk, her yoga pants wrinkled and her oversized sweater hanging loose on her frame like armor that had failed to protect her. The police officers flanked her position while Dad sat heavily on the leather couch, his weathered hands covering his face in defeat. Emma had gathered her siblings near the fireplace, whispering reassurances while keeping nervous eyes on the adult drama unfolding across the lobby. Noah clutched his backpack like a lifeline, while the twins Lucy and Sophie held hands with matching expressions of confusion and fear. I emerged from the elevator expecting to negotiate a family crisis, but my phone rang before I could speak. The caller ID made my blood freeze. Brad. Calling from Bora Bora at 3 a.m, Chicago time. Howard, thank God you answered. I've been trying to reach Samantha for hours, but she's not picking up. I need to talk to her immediately. His voice carried panic and exhaustion that suggested this wasn't a happy vacation check-in. Brad, she's right here with the kids. What's going on? I thought you were enjoying your surprise trip. A bitter laugh echoed through the phone connection. Surprise trip, Howard. I'm not in Bora Bora. I'm at my attorney's office in downtown Detroit serving divorce papers. I found out about everything yesterday. The lobby went silent as if someone had sucked all the oxygen from the room. Samantha's face drained of color, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Found out about what? I asked, though dread was already forming in my chest. The gambling Howard, the affair, the stolen money, all of it. I hired a private investigator 3 weeks ago because our bank accounts kept emptying and Samantha kept making excuses about business expenses. When I got the report yesterday, I filed for emergency custody and divorce. Samantha lunged for my phone, her desperation overriding any pretense of dignity. Brad, honey, let me explain. You don't understand what's been happening. But Brad's voice cut through her pleading like ice. I understand perfectly, Samantha. You've been having an affair with Trevor from your insurance office for 8 months. You've gambled away the kids' college funds, our mortgage payments, and borrowed against my construction equipment without permission. And according to your brother's credit report, you've been using his identity to secure loans that you immediately lost at the casino. The police officers stepped closer, their earlier annoyance replaced by professional interest in what was clearly becoming a criminal matter. One began taking notes while the other moved to ensure the children couldn't overhear the devastating details of their family's destruction. The Bora Bora story was your cover for running away with our kids before I could serve papers. Brad continued, his voice breaking with exhaustion and betrayal. You told them they were visiting Uncle Howard for a fun vacation while Mommy and Daddy took a romantic trip. You packed their entire lives into a moving truck because you knew you could never come home. Samantha's knees buckled, sending her onto the cold marble floor as 30 years of lies collapsed simultaneously. The elaborate house of cards she had constructed through manipulation, fraud, and deceit crumbled under the weight of multiple betrayals exposed in a single phone conversation. Dad raised his head from his hands, his expression shifting from defeat to horrified understanding. The business loans, the expansion, Howard's investment partnership. None of it was real. Nothing was real. Mr. Thompson. Brad's voice carried clearly through the lobby's acoustics. Samantha lost her job at the insurance office 6 weeks ago when they discovered she was stealing from elderly clients' policies. The federal government is investigating her for mail fraud and elder abuse. I only found out when FBI agents showed up at my construction site asking about our family's sudden gambling wealth. Emma's sharp intake of breath cut through the adult conversation. At 14, she understood enough about investigations and fraud to realize her mother wasn't just in trouble. She was going to prison. Patricia's voice echoed from my phone as she called Dad's number, her panic audible even through the digital connection. She had been listening from Naperville as her perfect daughter's life revealed itself as an elaborate criminal enterprise. "Daniel, what's happening?" Samantha called, crying about Howard abandoning the family, but the children are supposed to be safely in his apartment. "Why are there police officers if—" I watched Dad age 10 years as he realized he would have to explain to his wife that their retirement was gone. Their house was forfeit and their daughter was a federal criminal who had victimized dozens of elderly families. Samantha struggled to her feet, desperation replacing the entitled confidence she had worn like a crown for 30 years. "You don't understand. I was trying to fix everything. The gambling was supposed to generate enough money to pay back what I borrowed. The affair was just comfort during a difficult time. The identity theft was temporary until my business got profitable. Everything was supposed to work out." One of the police officers stepped forward, his expression reflecting years of experience with criminals who rationalized their choices until reality forced accountability. "Ma'am, I need you to understand that you have several serious legal issues to address: identity theft fraud, child endangerment, and potentially federal charges related to mail fraud. You need to contact an attorney immediately and arrange proper care for these children tonight." Emma stood up straighter, her adolescent voice carrying adult authority born from crisis. "Officer, can you call our grandparents, Grandma and Grandpa Collins, my dad's parents in Detroit? They have custody papers and they're expecting us." Smart girl. While the adults had been destroying each other with revelations and accusations, Emma had been protecting her siblings by ensuring they had a safe place to land when their mother's house of cards finally collapsed. Jake cleared his throat diplomatically. "Mr. Thompson, I hate to interrupt family business, but the U-Haul has been blocking the driveway for over 3 hours. City towing services will impound it at 4 a.m. if it's not moved to legal parking." Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the massive truck sitting like a monument to Samantha's failed scheme. Inside that cargo bay sat the physical remnants of a family life that had been built on lies, manipulation, and stolen money. My attorney Marcus answered his emergency line on the second ring, his professional voice cutting through my exhaustion. "Howard, I've been expecting your call. I got a heads up from federal prosecutors about your sister's case. We need to meet first thing Monday morning to document your identity theft claims and separate your finances from her criminal activity." As dawn approached, through the lobby windows casting long shadows across marble floors littered with the debris of family dysfunction, I realized this was the moment everything changed forever. The enabling stopped here. The manipulation ended now. The lies died tonight. But looking at 4 innocent children whose entire world had just shattered, I also knew the real work of rebuilding was just beginning. Monday morning arrived with Marcus Wilson's reassuring presence in my downtown office conference room, his burgundy leather briefcase spreading legal documents across the polished table like battle plans. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, Chicago's morning commute bustled past while we systematically documented the financial carnage Samantha had inflicted on our family. "Howard, your sister has been busy," Marcus said, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses as he reviewed bank statements and credit reports. 18 different loan applications using your Social Security number 3 business credit cards in your name and a line of credit against your apartment that you never authorized. The numbers made my head spin. $247,000 in fraudulent debt that would have destroyed my career credit and financial future if I hadn't discovered the scheme in time. But here's what makes this interesting from a federal perspective. Marcus continued, pulling out a manila folder marked with FBI letterhead. "Your sister wasn't just stealing from family. Agent Sarah Chen from the Financial Crimes Division has been investigating a systematic fraud operation targeting elderly insurance clients throughout the Chicago metropolitan area." My coffee grew cold as Marcus explained the scope of Samantha's criminal enterprise. For over 2 years, she had been manipulating elderly clients at Metropolitan Insurance Group, convincing them to cash out life insurance policies and invest in fictional business opportunities that generated massive commissions, while emptying their retirement savings. The federal investigation began when Harold Pemberton, an 83-year-old widower in Schaumburg, contacted the FBI after losing his deceased wife's life insurance payout to what he thought was a guaranteed investment program. Your sister had convinced him that a young entrepreneur named Howard Thompson was developing medical technology that would revolutionize elder care. The irony hit like a physical blow. Samantha had used my name and professional reputation to defraud vulnerable seniors while simultaneously stealing my identity for personal loans. She had weaponized my success against both my family and dozens of innocent victims. How many people did she steal from? I asked, though I dreaded the answer. 67 confirmed victims so far, with total losses exceeding $3.4 million. The youngest victim was 71, the oldest was 94. Many of them invested their entire life savings based on fraudulent presentations about your business acumen and investment guarantees. Agent Chen arrived at 10:30 sharp, her professional demeanor carrying the weight of someone who had seen too many families destroyed by financial predators. She spread crime scene photographs across our conference table, showing Samantha's elaborate office setup with fake awards, forged business licenses, and presentations featuring my photograph and fabricated credentials. Mr. Thompson, your sister created an entire false identity for you as a medical technology investor, Agent Chen explained. She used your LinkedIn profile, your college graduation photos, and details about your marketing career to build credibility with elderly targets. Many victims believed they were investing directly with you. The photographs showed a sophisticated operation that went far beyond simple fraud. Samantha had created professional brochures, fake medical studies, and even staged office meetings to convince seniors that their money was funding legitimate research that would revolutionize healthcare while generating massive returns. The psychological manipulation was particularly cruel, Agent Chen continued. She targeted recently widowed seniors who were vulnerable and isolated, offering them both financial security and the emotional satisfaction of investing in technology that would help other elderly people. Many victims told investigators that investing with Howard Thompson made them feel useful and important during a difficult time. I thought about my parents' devastated faces in the lobby 3 days earlier, multiplied by 67 other families who had trusted Samantha's lies. Each victim represented someone's grandparent, someone's beloved family member, who had worked decades to accumulate the savings my sister had stolen. What's our next move? I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. Marcus opened his briefcase and withdrew a thick stack of legal documents. We file comprehensive identity theft claims to clear your name from all fraudulent accounts. Agent Chen's investigation provides overwhelming evidence that you had no knowledge of or participation in these crimes. Your quick action in changing locks and refusing to enable Samantha's final manipulation actually helps demonstrate your character. Agent Chen nodded approvingly. Your testimony will be crucial in securing convictions that protect other potential victims. Federal prosecutors are confident we can recover significant assets for restitution, especially if we move quickly before your sister disposes of remaining resources. Over the next 4 hours, we constructed an airtight case documenting Samantha's systematic fraud, identity theft, and elder abuse. My phone records proved I had no contact with victims. My bank statements showed I never received fraudulent funds. My employment records demonstrated I worked in marketing, not medical technology investment. But the most powerful evidence was my decisive action Saturday night. By refusing to enable Samantha's manipulation and exposing her lies instead of covering for family, I had demonstrated integrity that prosecutors could contrast with her criminal behavior. There's one more thing, Agent Chen said as our meeting concluded. Your parents mentioned that your sister convinced them to liquidate retirement assets for business investments. If they're willing to testify about her fraudulent representations, we can potentially recover their money through civil asset forfeiture of your sister's ill-gotten gains. Marcus gathered his documents with professional satisfaction. Howard, your sister made a critical mistake by targeting you for her final scheme. Your refusal to be manipulated and your immediate legal action will help dozens of elderly victims recover their stolen savings. Sometimes doing the right thing for yourself ends up protecting everyone. As Agent Chen left with evidence that would ensure Samantha faced federal prosecution, I realized this confrontation had never been about apartment keys or babysitting responsibilities. This was about stopping a predator who had spent years victimizing the most vulnerable members of our community while hiding behind family loyalty and manipulation. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Uncle Howard, thank you for not letting Mom fool you. We're safe with Grandma and Grandpa Collins. They say you're a hero for protecting other families." That afternoon, I returned to my apartment for the first time since Saturday night's chaos. The new locks felt solid and secure, but more importantly, they represented boundaries that would protect both my future and the futures of potential victims who would never encounter Samantha's schemes. The real satisfaction wasn't in defeating my sister's manipulation. It was in knowing that 4 innocent children would grow up understanding the difference between family loyalty and enabling criminal behavior. 6 weeks later, I stood in the federal courthouse in downtown Chicago, watching U.S. Marshals escort Samantha through metal detectors in an orange jumpsuit that replaced the designer clothes she once wore to manipulate elderly victims. The transformation was startling. Gone was the confident predator who had terrorized our family for decades, replaced by someone who looked small and defeated under fluorescent lighting. Agent Chen had called that morning with news that made my chest tight with satisfaction. The FBI raid on Metropolitan Insurance Group's offices had uncovered evidence linking Samantha to 89 additional victims across 3 states, bringing total losses to over $4.7 million. Computer forensics revealed detailed spreadsheets tracking victim assets, manipulation strategies, and projected revenue from each elderly target. "Your sister kept meticulous records," Agent Chen explained as we walked toward the courtroom. "She rated victims based on their vulnerability, wealth, and family support systems. Isolated widows with substantial assets received her most sophisticated manipulation techniques. The federal prosecutor assistant U.S. Attorney Janet Morrison had built an overwhelming case using evidence that read like a textbook on financial predator behavior. Samantha's office computer contained over 3,000 emails documenting her systematic abuse of elderly clients, including strategies for overcoming their resistance to risky investments. One email exchange particularly chilled my blood. Samantha had written to Trevor, her affair partner and co-conspirator. "Harold Pemberton is asking too many questions about Howard Thompson's medical credentials. I need you to create more convincing fake documentation before he gets suspicious and withdraws his money." The courtroom filled with faces that represented the human cost of Samantha's crimes. Harold Pemberton sat in the front row, his 83-year-old frame supported by a walker, his eyes reflecting the betrayal of someone who had trusted a young woman he thought cared about his welfare. Dorothy Martinez, 78, clutched her daughter's hand while reading a victim impact statement that described losing her deceased husband's life insurance payout to Samantha's fraudulent investment scheme. "Mrs. Thompson told me that investing with her brother would help fund medical research that could have saved my husband's life." Dorothy read through tears. "She made me feel like his death had meaning, like I was helping other families avoid our pain. Instead, she stole the only security I had left and used my grief to manipulate me." Brad sat several rows behind me with his parents who had temporary custody of the children during federal proceedings. He had driven down from Detroit to witness justice for the woman who had destroyed their marriage through lies, gambling addiction, and adultery. His construction business was slowly recovering from the financial damage Samantha had inflicted by forging his signature on equipment loans. The thing that bothers me most," Brad had told me during a coffee meeting the previous week, "is that she used our kids as emotional weapons. Every time I questioned our finances, she would start crying about Emma needing college funds or the twins requiring special tutoring. She weaponized my love for my children to enable her criminal behavior." Judge Patricia Hoffman reviewed the sentencing guidelines with an expression that suggested decades of experience with financial predators who targeted vulnerable populations. Samantha's attorney, a public defender named Robert Manning, made weak arguments about gambling addiction and mental health issues that rang hollow against the overwhelming evidence of calculated systematic fraud. "Your Honor, Assistant U.S. Attorney Morrison addressed the court. This defendant didn't steal money impulsively or due to addiction. She created an elaborate criminal enterprise designed specifically to exploit elderly victims' trust isolation and desire to help others. Her methods were sophisticated, her targeting was deliberate, and her disregard for victims' welfare was absolute. When Judge Hoffman asked if Samantha wanted to address the court before sentencing, my sister stood shakily and offered words that felt empty after months of lies. "I know I hurt people and I'm sorry. I never meant for things to go so far. I just wanted to provide for my family and got caught up in something I couldn't control." Harold Pemberton's sharp intake of breath echoed through the courtroom. Even in her final moment before sentencing, Samantha was minimizing her choices and avoiding accountability for the systematic abuse she had inflicted on dozens of families. Judge Hoffman's voice carried decades of authority as she delivered the sentence that would reshape multiple lives. "Mrs. Thompson, you have been convicted of mail fraud, wire fraud, identity theft, and elder abuse spanning multiple states and involving 89 confirmed victims. The financial damage exceeds $4.7 million, but the emotional and psychological damage to elderly victims and their families cannot be quantified." The courtroom held its breath as Judge Hoffman continued. "This court sentences you to 12 years in federal prison followed by 5 years of supervised release. You will pay full restitution to all victims and your assets will be liquidated through civil forfeiture to fund victim compensation." 12 years. Samantha would be 41 when released, her children grown, and graduated, her ability to manipulate elderly victims permanently destroyed by federal conviction records. The U.S. Marshals approached her position as Judge Hoffman finalized the conditions of her sentence. But the most satisfying moment came when Agent Chen approached our family group after proceedings concluded. "Mr. Thompson, I wanted you to know that civil asset forfeiture recovered enough funds to provide full restitution to your parents and 67 other victims. Your quick action in exposing your sister's fraud prevented her from disposing of stolen assets. Many families will recover their life savings because you chose justice over family loyalty." Dad's voice shook with emotion as he shook Agent Chen's hand. "We lost our house, but we got our integrity back. Howard showed us the difference between enabling destruction and demanding accountability." Mom, who had spent weeks in counseling learning about manipulation and codependency, managed a smile that reflected hard-won wisdom. 30 years of making excuses for Samantha's behavior didn't help her become a better person. It just enabled her to become a more sophisticated criminal. That evening, Emma called from Detroit, where she was thriving in high school under her paternal grandparents' stable guardianship. "Uncle Howard, my counselor, says you probably saved Mom's life by stopping her criminal behavior when you did. If she had kept stealing from elderly people, someone might have hurt her when they discovered the truth. You protected everyone, including her, by refusing to enable her choices." As I hung up the phone in my secure apartment with its new locks and healthy boundaries, I realized that justice wasn't about revenge or punishment. Justice was about protecting vulnerable people from predators, holding criminals accountable for their choices, and teaching the next generation the difference between family loyalty and enabling destruction. Samantha would spend the next 12 years learning that actions have consequences while her victims recovered their dignity and financial security through a system that valued truth over manipulation. 18 months after that chaotic Saturday night when Samantha tried to manipulate her way into my apartment, I stood in my kitchen preparing Sunday dinner for guests who represented the healthy family relationships that emerged from crisis. The autumn sunlight streaming through my windows illuminated a table set for 6: my parents, Emma, who was visiting from Detroit on fall break, Marcus, my attorney, who had become a close friend, and Rebecca, the woman I had been dating for 8 months. The transformation in our family dynamics felt miraculous, though I knew it was the result of hard work, counseling, and commitment to honesty over comfort. Dad had recovered his retirement savings through federal restitution and was volunteering with senior advocacy groups to help other elderly victims recognize financial fraud. His shoulders carried strength again instead of defeat, and his eyes reflected pride in choosing accountability over enabling. Mom bustled around my kitchen with energy I hadn't seen since childhood, her therapy sessions having taught her the difference between protecting someone you love and protecting them from consequences. She had become a fierce advocate for elderly victims' rights, channeling her protective instincts toward vulnerable strangers instead of destructive family members. "Howard, I need to tell you something," Dad said as we arranged chairs around my dining table. "Your mother and I talked about this decision for weeks, and we want you to know why we're proud of what you did that night." He paused, his weathered hand steady as he folded napkins with the precision of someone who had spent decades in construction management. "For 30 years, we enabled Samantha's behavior because we confused love with making excuses. Every time she manipulated someone, stole something, or lied about her actions, we protected her from consequences instead of protecting other people from her choices. We thought we were being good parents, but we were actually helping create a predator." Mom nodded, her expression reflecting hard-won wisdom that came from months of family counseling sessions. "When you changed those locks and refused to let her manipulate you, you did what we should have done decades earlier. You showed us that real love sometimes requires saying no, even when saying yes feels easier." Emma, now 16 and thriving in her junior year of high school, had grown into a thoughtful young woman whose experiences with family dysfunction had taught her valuable lessons about healthy relationships. "Uncle Howard, my dad says you probably saved our family by stopping Mom's criminal behavior when you did. She might have kept escalating until someone got hurt or she involved us kids in her schemes. By protecting your boundaries, you protected all of us." The conversation was interrupted by my phone ringing with a call from Agent Chen, who had become an unexpected ally in my journey toward understanding the broader impact of family dysfunction. "Howard, I wanted to give you an update on the victim restitution program. We've now recovered assets for 93 families, and several elderly victims have asked me to pass along their gratitude. Harold Pemberton specifically wanted you to know that getting his money back allowed him to remain in his own home instead of moving to assisted living." These updates had become regular reminders that my decision to prioritize accountability over family loyalty had protected dozens of vulnerable people from continued victimization. Each recovered dollar represented some elderly person's dignity, security, and independence restored through a justice system that valued truth over manipulation. Marcus raised his wine glass as Rebecca helped serve the roasted chicken that had become my signature Sunday dinner dish. "I've been practicing law for 25 years, and I've seen too many families destroyed by members who exploit loyalty to avoid consequences for destructive behavior. Howard's decision to prioritize justice over enabling manipulation should be a model for anyone dealing with family dysfunction." Rebecca, a social worker who specialized in family counseling, had helped me understand the psychological dynamics that made Samantha's manipulation so effective for so many years. "The hardest part about setting boundaries with manipulative family members is accepting that you can't control their choices. Only your response to their choices." Samantha spent years using emotional leverage to force other people to solve problems she created through criminal behavior. As we shared dinner conversation that ranged from Emma's college plans to Dad's volunteer work to Mom's involvement in senior advocacy, I realized how different our family gatherings felt compared to the tense walking on eggshells atmosphere that had defined holiday meals when Samantha's chaos dominated every interaction. "I got a letter from Samantha last week," Mom mentioned quietly as we cleared dinner plates. "She's participating in prison programs for gambling addiction and says she understands now how her choices hurt so many people. She asked me to tell you that she's grateful you stopped her before she hurt more elderly victims." The letter represented progress toward accountability that might never have occurred if I had enabled her manipulation that Saturday night. Prison counseling was forcing Samantha to confront the reality of her choices, without family members rushing to minimize consequences or make excuses for her behavior. Emma helped load my dishwasher with the comfortable efficiency of someone who had found stability and security in healthy family relationships. Her younger siblings were thriving with their paternal grandparents, excelling in school and developing interests that reflected normal childhood development instead of anxiety about family chaos. "Uncle Howard, I've been thinking about that night when everything changed," Emma said as we worked together in comfortable routine. I was scared when the police came and confused about why you wouldn't let us up to your apartment. But now I understand that you were protecting us from something that would have been much worse if it had continued. As my guests prepared to leave that evening, each hug and goodbye carried gratitude for relationships built on honesty, respect, and healthy boundaries. Dad's handshake lingered with unspoken appreciation for a son who had shown him the difference between love and enabling. Mom's embrace reflected relief at finally understanding how to protect people she cared about without making excuses for destructive behavior. Rebecca stayed behind to help finish cleaning up her presence in my life, representing the possibility of building intimate relationships based on mutual respect rather than manipulation or control. Her work with troubled families had taught her to recognize and appreciate the courage required to prioritize accountability over comfort. "You know what impresses me most about your story?" she asked as we turned off the kitchen lights and settled on my couch overlooking the Chicago skyline. "You didn't just protect yourself from your sister's manipulation. You protected 4 children, 2 elderly parents, and dozens of vulnerable strangers by refusing to enable criminal behavior. That takes tremendous strength." Looking out at the city lights reflecting off Lake Michigan, I thought about how different my life felt compared to 18 months earlier when family dysfunction had threatened to destroy everything I had worked to build. The new locks on my door represented more than physical security. They symbolized emotional boundaries that protected healthy relationships while preventing manipulation from poisoning genuine love. My phone buzzed with a text from Harold Pemberton, the 83-year-old victim whose recovery had meant so much to Agent Chen's investigation. "Howard, I hope you don't mind me contacting you directly, but I wanted you to know that recovering my wife's life insurance money allowed me to establish a scholarship fund in her memory. 25 students will attend college next year because you chose to expose fraud instead of enabling it. Thank you for protecting people you never met." The message represented the ripple effects of choosing accountability over family loyalty. By refusing to be manipulated, I had protected not just my own future, but the futures of dozens of families and students who would benefit from resources that might have been lost to continued criminal behavior. As Rebecca and I planned our upcoming weekend trip to visit Emma and her siblings in Detroit, I reflected on the life lesson that had emerged from family crisis. Real love sometimes requires difficult choices that feel harsh in the moment, but protect everyone involved from long-term destruction. Enabling harmful behavior isn't kindness, it's participation in causing damage that spreads far beyond family boundaries. The most profound transformation wasn't in my relationship with Samantha, who was learning accountability through federal prison programs. The real change was in discovering that families could be rebuilt on foundations of honesty, respect, and healthy boundaries that protected everyone involved from manipulation and abuse. My apartment had become a sanctuary for genuine relationships where people could be themselves without fear of being manipulated, controlled, or exploited for someone else's benefit. The locks I changed that Saturday night hadn't just kept out an unwelcome visitor, they had created space for the authentic love and respect that made family gatherings feel like celebrations instead of survival experiences. Standing at my window overlooking the city where so many elderly victims had recovered their dignity and security, I understood that justice wasn't about punishment or revenge. Justice was about protecting vulnerable people from predators while teaching the next generation that accountability and love aren't opposites. They're partners in creating relationships that nurture growth instead of enabling destruction. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is refuse to participate in their harmful choices, even when that refusal feels like betrayal. Real family loyalty means protecting each other from becoming victims, or perpetrators not protecting harmful behavior from consequences. Have you ever faced a situation where standing up for what's right meant disappointing people you love? Family relationships can be the most challenging to navigate when someone's behavior becomes destructive. But setting boundaries often protects everyone involved, including the person whose choices need accountability. I'd love to hear your thoughts about balancing family loyalty with personal integrity in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please consider liking this video to help others who might be struggling with similar family dynamics. Find these insights. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about overcoming family manipulation and building healthy relationships based on mutual respect. And please share this with anyone who might benefit from understanding that love and accountability can work together to create stronger, more authentic family bonds. Thank you for taking this journey with me, and I hope you find the courage to protect both yourself and others from relationships that prioritize comfort over character. Until next time, remember that the healthiest families are built on truth, respect, and boundaries that protect everyone's well-being.